This is the ERP Advisor.
The ERP Advisor's overview of Unit 4.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. This summer, ERP Advisors Group is spotlighting the most prominent vendors in the ERP software market. Today, we will be discussing Unit 4's offerings and providing key insights into our experiences working with them. Sean Windle is my guest today. Sean, thank you for joining me.
Hello.
Yes. So Unit 4 has been around for quite a long time. It was established in the early 80s, if I remember correctly from the research that was given to me. It's a large platform with a wide variety of offerings, such as financial management, accounting, ERP, HCM, FP&A, just to name a few. Can you talk to us a little bit about Unit 4 and who they are and what they do?
Sure, I definitely can. First off, you need to get some more guests, girl, because I'm like your only guest. You need some more friends. No.
No, you are our expert, our resident expert, and we
goodness.
wouldn't want anyone else.
Oh,
for sure.
thank you. That's
Yes.
really sweet of you. We'll as we get into the fall season and everybody's back from their holidays on vacation, I don't know. We'll definitely do some more peeps. But this
For
is
sure.
great, and it's really been a good series for sure, too.
Yes, it
Hopefully
really
helpful to everybody to understand these vendors.
Yeah.
But Unit 4 specifically, Unit 4 is probably not a vendor that a lot of people have heard of. So again, we're honest, we're open. We usually say really good things about our vendors. That's a little secret, right? We don't, I mean, who am I or who are we to say, oh, blah, 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 right? I'm sorry, but these are hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars of worth that these companies generate every year.
Right.
So they're all different, right? And that's the spirit that we're going to talk about, I think, with Unit 4 that I'm going to share some concepts on today.
Yes.
So you're spot on about the capability that Unit 4 has. And it's interesting because the combination of financials, human resources management, FP&A together, that stack is a nice stack of software that is really built from kind of a common platform. And it's unusual, right? Some of the other vendors don't provide that. There are some that do. But even thinking of like Workday, it's a little different, right? They purchased their FP&A solution. Now, I had to go back and look a little bit deeper to see sort of what Unit 4's kind of history was and where they maybe picked up some of the apps. There was a major acquisition or integration they did with a company called Aggresso several years ago, but you see this kind of platform that's evolved, and that's really the big offering of this organization is this combined stack,
Right.
and really kind of geared towards, what we've seen. We think about Unit 4 from kind of a people-centric businesses, so things like higher education or nonprofit, professional services, public sector, that those are areas that really like that whole stack that Unit 4 has to offer, which the other piece too to mention about Unit 4 that's a little unique is they're really headquartered and have a global presence, right, but headquartered in the UK. So Sage, of course, is headquartered in the UK as well. But Unit 4 sort of brings that more international sort of vibe, frankly, to the solutions. And if you have a client when we have a client that has a lot of international holdings,
Right.
they're headquartered not in the U.S.
Right.
I think there's a few companies in the world that are not in the U.S.
That's
or
right.
organizations or nonprofits or public sectors,
Right.
but also in the U.S. as well. So
Right.
it's really good for that kind of international, kind of a global deployment that an organization is looking for that has, again, that reach globally.
Right.
A lot of
Well,
globals.
you did touch on this. I was going to ask you what industry specifically Unit 4, is a good fit for. And you mentioned nonprofits. Can you talk to us a little bit about the industries Unit 4 is a
bet.
good fit for?
Yeah, and I think that the key differentiator there, right? Every software vendor is a little bit different on kind of where they focus, but again, Unit 4 is more kind of in the people-centric businesses and organizations. So government, nonprofit, education, sort of projects or professional services. I think that's how we sort of think about the organization. And it's good too because the focus on even if you say engineering, architecture, construction, professional services like management consulting firms, advertising firms, that professional services projects sort of goes from a high level vertical down to a sub vertical, business professional services, those types of
More
things.
specialized.
Yeah, more specialized in that particular area. Really good again on nonprofit. We've talked to Unit4 about one of our clients that started locally, actually up in Boulder, and had sort of global presence, but definitely has increased their global presence and now has really increased their global presence. And the Unit4 platform is really a unique platform in that it's built for the global focus, right? Again, a lot of other ERPs, the North American ERPs, are based on the way the Americans do it. Well, that's not the way the rest of the world does it, no matter what we think.
Right.
Especially if we travel to France and try to talk without speaking in French.
Right.
You got to at least try, right? But when you're rolling out enterprise software, it really does need to be around not just the number or the date format, right? Of course, that has to be localized.
Right.
But also just even phrases such as trades payable and, instead of AP, there's different phrases that different geos use. And what we've seen is Unit4 has that background and has that experience.
Well, that's good to know. So would that include currency?
Absolutely.
And not just date, but currency and, gosh, the terminology that they use, right?
That's it.
Yes.
That's right.
I would
Language.
have never thought of that.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's a whole thing, right? Because you have, the localization, it's called enterprise software. It's a lot of different factors. It's number formats. It is the currencies, currency translation rates. It's the language of the user experience. It's totally different, right? If you have French versus German versus English versus Indian versus whatever. I mean, there's so many, and there's multiple languages in India, right, that are going to come through, or even Chinese. Mandarin and different things like that, right? That, again, one of the benefits of working with a more internationally based ERP company is they're just used to that, whereas other organizations might not necessarily be because they're more North American based.
Well, let me ask you this. Say the company is based in the United States but has different offices around the world with different languages, different currencies, what have you. Does Unit4, is it able to adapt to each different location, or is it strictly based on where the headquarters is?
Yeah, good question.
Does that make sense?
It does. It makes perfect sense. And the answer is yes. And most of the ERP vendors, I don't know if we've really talked about this over the years, but it's important to know that most of the vendors will support localization. That's the generalization of requirements. Like we have a satellite company that's going to be all over, right? And we have in our request for information a whole section of requirements around localization, right? And like I said, number formats, right? We're working with a German company right now, and we put together a total cost of ownership. Not only needed to be in euros, but we also needed to use German formatting or European formatting. Instead of a period, we use a comma, and instead of a comma, we use a period, right? Like you have to replace that out. And most of the ERP systems will support that for sure, right? They do a really good job with that. Most will do a really good job with translation. So you have your screen, you open up your screen for even a login screen, and it says certain things in English. Okay, that's fine for you and me.
Right.
But for our Spanish-based resources, that's not right. It needs to be in Spanish. So there's tools that are built into most of the ERPs to just do that translation automatically. But here's the thing: this is the secret, right? That if most of your customers are North American based, the localization becomes a little bit of a, oh, by the way. Right? Yeah, we meet those requirements, it's fine, right? And most of the vendors give the ability to sort of customize the user experience so you can change things, right? If you have somebody who's a Spanish speaker who looks at the screen and says, that's just stupid the way that's translated, we can just change it, like with the right security. But when you work with an organization that focuses on many disparate or different internationally based organizations, they tend to take more responsibility to get that right? And that's one of the benefits of working with a Unit4 is that they just think that way. That's just how they operate, whereas some of the other vendors, again, They're
Yeah.
like, oh, we don't need to worry about that, right? Until you have 1,000 users around the world that are like, we can't use the software because we don't understand what
We
it says.
can't understand the language, and you can't hire, someone in all these different locations that speak English, right?
That's right.
Yes. So is it more that each individual location would have its own, what is the
Localization. Yeah.
Or is it like they would have a drop-down menu and you would pick which language you needed to see and have it come through and translate as?
Yeah.
How does that work?
It could be either,
Yeah.
too, right? Like there's a preference. User preferences are saved in your ERP and what language you want to see. So I think, maybe when you review, what's a common time where you see that? Maybe an end user software agreement, a EULA, end user license agreement, or what language? Choose your language, right? Or when you get an iPhone, that's right. Choose your language, right?
Or e-commerce.
E-commerce
right?
for sure. Yeah, it's the same thing. What's your language? You specify it. The system saves what your preference is and then shows you that experience throughout.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But again, the key, and that's the point I really want to make here, is that, I would even say all of the prevalent vendors support definitely the most prominent international languages around the globe, for sure.
Right.
But, for instance, we have a client right now that has a pretty good-sized operation in Hungary. And when we went and talked to the vendors, they're in the food and beverage business. So when we went to the food and beverage ERP vendors and we asked, do you support Hungarian localization, right? The answer from some of them was no, but we can build it. It's just taking the current forms and changing the language.
They haven't had the need.
Right. But others said, oh, yeah, we've done that. Oh, really? Well, that actually means you have real customers in Hungary. Because here's the other thing that, again, an internationally based ERP provides that maybe some of others don't, is there's also taxation requirements.
Oh, right.
Which can be a nightmare. It's maybe it's not a nightmare. It's sort of like, it's like a very challenging child. They're not a nightmare, but they're challenging, very, very challenging.
Right.
But seriously, where you have to build, your system has to integrate with some of the taxation agencies in some of these countries. So, and not just, here, it's our tax return. No, it's like these are the sales that we made in this period.
For
right?
each individual transaction,
Each individual transaction, right? Now it can be summarized and sent over, but the governments in some countries, that's what they do. That's
right.
just how it works. So that's super good.
Well, can we talk a little bit about what kind of partner ecosystem Unit4 has?
Yeah, it's an interesting partnership that Unit4 has. Again, think more globally. When we anytime, like even I'm on Unit4's page, their homepage, and I just realized it says languages on the upper right, which is quite normal. But they have like 9 languages listed.
Oh, wow.
Oracle's doesn't.
Really?
Just saying. Now that doesn't say that Oracle doesn't support it. I know they support it, but right there alone, you start to
Shows
see, right?
Their versatility.
Their versatility. They're looking at. They know their prospects are coming from, really, all over the world here. So, same thing with the partners. That's what I was going to get to. Was their capability is sort of, again, think more on a global basis. Partners located throughout the world, which is extremely helpful. Again, given the example that we showed, or that we have right now about a Hungarian-based organization, or we have another organization we're working with that's in Germany, and you want that partner, if the bulk of your operations are in these other countries, right, you want a partner who's really based in those countries.
That's right.
Now, if you have a global deployment and you choose a North American partner, but most of your operations are in other places, you're constantly kind of like, you guys don't really understand what we're saying. We just use different phrases, right? I think with one of our UK implementations, it took them a while to change to some of the NetSuite nomenclature, which was just different. Like I said, payables was called something different. Trade payables, I think it was, which is also what distributors say. I can't remember exactly what the phrase was, but it was just different.
The
right?
lost in translation.
Lost
right?
in translation. And man, when you're doing ERP, you're already losing in translation, right? Like from the first day, the client's subject matter expert says, this is how I want my accounting done.
No matter the language.
No matter the language. And then the consultant's like, okay. wait a minute, you didn't really understand what I just said there. Now you bring in language, and that's a big deal, right?
And multiple languages
multiple
at that
languages.
sometimes. Yeah.
That's right. Talk about lost in translation, just like you said. So partnerships, super key, and I think there's an ecosystem there that really does support those needs.
Yeah. From your experience working with Unit4 and our clients, how does and why does Unit4 tend to win over their competitors?
Yeah, great question. I think thinking of a couple deals of recent that Unit4 is, they're again kind of renowned in certain verticals for sure, like we talked about government. And when you see that they get a good win in a certain area, then I think other organizations kind of see that as well. It becomes more of an accepted solution. So I do think this more kind of an international flair that this solution really has, I think is a big deal. They've got very large organizations that and cities and counties and provinces that they're working with. And then also even on kind of like the nonprofit side as well. You know, a global nonprofit looks to this solution and sees a lot of what's there that's supported, whereas some of the other nonprofit solutions just don't have that global kind of presence to it. So good feature functionality, good experience, good customer base. And it's all the right reasons, I guess is what I'm trying to say, right? It's not because, their salespeople are the prettiest. They might be. I'm not saying that they're not. But what I am saying is the software capability is really good in their area. And I think they focus in the areas that they do really well.
Yeah. What about their ownership structure? Does that tend to impact their offerings or the service they provide to clients?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think from what we've seen about Unit4, the ownership structure has changed over the years. But I think even as recent as 2021 here on my notes, thank you, Rebecca.
We appreciate the research.
We very much appreciate it. We want to get this stuff right as always, Juliet.
That's right.
If we don't say the right thing, tell us.
That's our disclaimer.
That's our disclaimer.
We welcome it.
But we always want to do the best we can here. So they're purchased by a firm, and I think maybe there was another firm that came in alongside, a private equity firm called TA Associates. And that's an interesting organization. They have, as a global private equity firm, they have had many holdings in enterprise software before. And have really taken organizations, invested in them, made them stronger, able to do a liquidity event or transition them to another partner or another private equity firm or whatever. So, I think the investment that the organization has gotten has been good for them. And it is in our world when we're talking about the vendors that we're talking about, right? These are very viable organizations. Unit4 is very viable. I mean, the sales, and if you look at the reach across the world, we've got, almost 300 and maybe 400 million in revenue.
Oh boy.
Lots of recurring revenue, lots of big customers behind it. Being private equity backed, they're getting a lot of investment. It is interesting to look at, so what does happen next? Right? Several other vendors we've talked about this summer are sort of similar, right? What happens next with these private equity-owned firms, right? One of the most recent ones that made the biggest transition, NetSuite was one, but Infor was another,
right.
Where their ownership, you could tell it was a little bit of kind of a not temporary, but it was like a stage. And they're getting, and I see
an interim
Unit4
to help them grow and be better, and then
perfect.
like
That's
setting
exactly
them
right.
up to
you
be
should
acquired.
put that in their playbook. That's exactly right. And I get the sense that that's it. That there's really we've got a great relationship with Unit4. We're going to actually do some podcasts and stuff with them. We really like them a lot. We're doing it with other vendors, but the bottom line is that we're seeing a lot of growth and excitement. We've seen some really key people in the industry go to that organization. And so I think they're getting the cloud strategy set, they're getting their marketing set, they're getting their global presence set so that they can really grow, and then something will happen, right? Which will be interesting to see.
Right. So, well, Sean, thank you for always sharing your experiences and your knowledge with us. And we'll catch you on another podcast where we'll continue our vendor series.
Perfect.
For sure. So,
all right. Thank you as always, Juliet. And good questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, be sure to continue. We will continue to offer this multi-part series to help you advance your ERP knowledge and allow you to take advantage of over a century of combined ERP experience from our expert consultants here at EAG. Thank you again for joining us today. Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome. Thank you.